All right, everybody. Charlie Marlow. That is the great Kenny Wallace right there. We are live on YouTube. We're actually also live on the Kenny Wallace X page for the first time. We're trying that out as well. And you probably see the headline already. We got 35 people that were waiting to watch this this live stream already, Kenny Wallace. And it says, breaking news, NASCAR disqualifies Mike Wallace from Daytona 500 for inactivity. Of course, your brother Mike. It was big news. You broke the news basically here on the Kenny Wallace YouTube channel a couple of weeks ago, and this is some unfortunate news. Tell everybody what's going on, Herm.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. I received a call from brother Mike on this Monday, I don't know, around 3 o'clock, and his voice sounded very dejected. He's embarrassed, but the headlines are right. So Mike received a phone call from Elton Sawyer, and Elton said, Mike, we're disqualifying you, not just from the Daytona 500, but anything in NASCAR. And of course, Mike was upset, but nice, very nice. I want to make sure everybody understands that. Mike told me that he told Elton, we're friends, but can you explain to me why? So Elton Sawyer told Mike that, Mike, because of your inactivity, you haven't done any racing in 5 years. So, listen, all I could do was be a supportive brother. I told Mike, I said, Mike, listen, deep breath, keep your head up high. But, yeah. So, I mean, that is the breaking news. And I do feel bad for Mike. Mike is embarrassed. And so, yeah, what a bummer.
Okay, so you said not just from the Daytona 500, but from all of NASCAR. So if he wanted to try to do something else, if he wanted to maybe run a truck race or an Xfinity race, is that also just off the table forever or what?
Yeah, and that surprises me. Elton Sawyer told Mike. Mike told me. I kind of think Mike called me, wanted me to know this. My brother Mike said, Herman, you are the very first person I've called. And I said, well, Mike, I'll put it on Coffee with Kenny tomorrow. Listen, we made the announcement. We'll end the announcement, right? That's the way it goes. So Mike said, furthermore, Elton said to me, Mike, you can't run anything because you've been inactive. And I don't know. I don't have Elton's phone number. NASCAR has always said, if you don't know, call us. So I'm sure there'll be some type of announcement why. But once again, Mike said, NASCAR's the competition side, and that's very important because we will get to that, Charlie. But then again, I'm wondering, okay, how will Mike, my gosh, he's got, 800 NASCAR starts? He's 65 years old. But I do understand NASCAR's point of view on this. Mike has only run a couple dirt races. I think Mike ran somewhere in Missouri and maybe down south a couple dirt races lately. He wasn't in anybody's way. He was up to speed, but NASCAR deems that Mike hasn't raced anything in 5 years. So they're the bosses.
And when this news was announced just a couple of weeks ago, there were a couple of people, I know you kind of went back and forth with a reporter on X who said, should a 65-year-old man who hasn't ran in a while be able to attempt to run the Daytona 500? So did you think that there was a decent chance of this happening, that NASCAR would come down and say, hey, you can't do this? Or do you think that Mike was already further along, further enough along in the process that it was kind of let's go, let's do this, like green light?
Yeah, fair question. I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to be the one to say things wrong. However, Mike did talk to NASCAR executives. That's a fact. And they were jacked up on Sundrop. They're like, Mike, let's do it. Well, come to find out, Charlie, Mike did talk to NASCAR executives. However, Mike didn't talk to the competition side. And, you learn more and more as you go. So, yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, I'm going to talk to NASCAR. Mike talks to NASCAR, and they're excited. Well, just like companies are, and maybe Mike should have called the competition side. Mike should have maybe called Elton Sawyer. But Mike thought, well, I've talked to NASCAR executives. They're excited. And Mike kind of starts the process. Sometimes we mess up. And I don't think Mike messed up, but I think Mike felt like he had the green light from NASCAR executives. Well, as we know, Charlie, listen, you're big into college football, and you're a great sportsman. You know a lot more than me, but you got all these categories in sports. Oh, well, you talk to the marketing team. That's not the people in charge of NASCAR. Well, who do I need to talk to? Oh, you need to talk to the competition side to get approved. So that's where this went wrong. So, yes, for the people that were not fans of Mike, for the reporter that said what he said about Mike, he ends up getting the last laugh. But I'm a badass, and here I am. And it hurt. It hurt me. It hurt me because I know my brother Mike. I love my brother Mike. It hurt me to see somebody come out so negative. Mm-hmm. And I already knew that Mike talked to NASCAR executives. So it's neither here or there. It was a timeline issue, and Mike is embarrassed. He's very embarrassed. And he's like, oh, my God, I'm embarrassed. But he felt like he had his ducks in a row, Charlie.
So you spoke to this a bit, but how dejected was he on the phone when he told you this? And I think everybody knows the story by now. If you followed the last couple of weeks, and Mike loses his wife, and you said he was lonely, and this was kind of a big life thing for him, right? Something to look forward to. He said he was working out. I mean, this is a big deal. So how down in the dumps is he right now?
He's devastated. He's embarrassed. He's more embarrassed than anything, because the reason he's embarrassed is because if he thought there was, after he talked to NASCAR executives, he would have never pursued it, right? He would have never pursued it, but he felt like he was good to go. But yeah, he's dejected. He's very embarrassed is what he told me. But, I told Mike, and look, I am the king of positive mental attitude, because everybody eats dirt in life. Let's be clear about that. Everybody watching this right now, yes, all of you, everybody eats dirt. And, we all eat dirt. And I've ate a lot of dirt, but I'm a badass, Charlie, and you know that. Hey, even Dale Jr. texted me. He said, man, I love that one show where you said I win at everything. And, and I referred to his dad, we just do. You're not going to get us. There's nobody getting nobody. Charlie, this was a storyline. And, the storyline just kind of ended, with not going, through it right. So Mike made a mistake and should have called competition first. But, but yeah, he's bummed out.
Yeah, so not to put you on the spot here, but I'm wondering, is there any precedent for something like this? And I learned from you that Mike would have been the second oldest to run the Daytona 500 if he made it. So how do you think they would rule on something like this in the future if it was somebody else? Maybe they were 63, but they raced a little bit more. I mean, you're 61, Schrader's 69. What if somebody dirt races? And do you think this maybe opens up Pandora's box a little bit? Could NASCAR ever have an age limit? Do you think they would have to set some type of rules for things like this?
Great question, and I like that, because here's why. I can relate with everything right now. I can relate with NASCAR's decision, and I can relate with Mike. And listen, it's not about me. We're talking about Mike. And I don't tell anybody anything. I tell them my experiences. I have people all around me saying, Herman, how do you set quick time? How do you win these dirt races against these 25, 30-year-old people? And I'm very serious when I say this. I keep my reps going. Once you quit doing something, you can seize up. But I just stay racing so much. Okay, so I'm sure Mike would have got approved if he would have stayed racing. You know, I bet Kenny Schrader would have been approved because he races 80 times a year. I bet I would have been approved. And I'll tell you why I would have been approved. Because last year I ran the Cars Touring Series for Dale Jr. Ran good on the lead lap, digging up underneath people, winning all these dirt races, setting quick time. I really think Mike would have been approved if he would have kept his reps up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that is the deciding factor. I just don't think there's a clear cut. You know, okay, you're this age, you're done. Because if you go back, I can remember Robin Pemberton, who was in charge of NASCAR at the time. We were watching, Morgan Shepherd racing at a very high age. I think Morgan was 70. I really do. Respond, right, Charlie? Respond. But Morgan, I think, was close to 70 and running the Busch Series, but Morgan had his reps in. And I'm not putting words in Elton Sawyer's mouth, but I think what they looked at was Mike, they had no reps,
mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like working out, right? If you've never worked out, oh my God, does that first workout just hurt? I want to go back to something you said. You talked to Mike about, the depression of this decision.
Mm-hmm.
I just told Mike, I said, Mike, listen, keep your head up high, deep breath. You're still Mike Wallace. That's what I meant by, hey, Mike, nobody gets you, but listen, I got a heart, and I'm sorry, but my wife has told me in the past, Kenny, you're too loyal. You're too nice. You give people too much money. That's just my nature. So, when you come after any of my brothers, I'm coming back at you. Listen, if you come at me or my family with a brick, I'm throwing a block back. And that's just, that's the way it is.
So we have almost 2,000 people watching live right now. Thank you very much, guys. And please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Give us a like as well. And I can't remember, but last year you had one of the big late model guys on, and didn't they say that Mike had asked him about running a late model last year? So obviously racing is on Mike's mind, whether it's late models or the Daytona 500. Now, obviously the Daytona 500 is the biggest stock car race on earth. Do you think now that he can't do that, will he still want to do something else? I mean, could a Cars Tour ride, could doing something in dirt kind of scratch that itch that he has right now, you think?
Yeah, so I want to say this, Charlie. You're the best at this. I grew up watching you. You're good at it.
Thank you.
I guess what I want to say is I support whatever my brothers want to do. I don't put things in their mind. People say to me, how do you get along with your brother Rusty so good? Because Rusty loves me, and he tells her, it's like when people see Rusty or Mike, they go, where's your brother Kenny? And I know that's got to aggravate them a little bit. Now, Mike's watching this right now. Mike will watch us. I love you, brother. I think now that this has went down and me and Mike talk every day, it's like I told him about Chrissy, Mike's daughter. My God, she was good. But it was like they kind of gave up and like even Steven, my family, I love them. When Steven couldn't run, the Xfinity Series and Chrissy couldn't run a high-level NASCAR, they gave up. They gave up. And my message, and I told Chrissy this, and I'm going to tell Mike this. Mike, if you love racing like I do, go race. I've spent $1 million. I built a shop up there. I paid for my motors. I've spent a lot of money living my life out because I love racing. I love racing so much. Schrader makes fun of me. I tell everybody I do everything myself. That's because I'm staying loose. I would tell Mike, and Mike's listening right now, brother, if you want to race that bad, go racing. Go racing. And whatever it is, I don't know if I would do that Cars Tour series. I don't know if I would do those ASA stuff because that asphalt stuff, it is so technical. It's about the car. Those cars are so technical, Charlie. I think I would do a little bit of my stuff, B mods.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now my A mods are badass. They're high horsepower motors. You know, you just don't jump in my car and go. My car's high horsepower, 800 horsepower. I mean, it's like lighting a bomb. You know, even though it's the 4 Series. So my answer to you was very long-winded, but I would tell Mike, if you want to race, let's race.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I would go dirt racing, and I would do it in the B mods or the A mods. You know, but Charlie, I don't need NASCAR to make me feel. I don't need anything. I need what I want. You know, and I'm the king. I went to sports therapy. You know, Square D paid for it all. They paid $22,000. You know, and I talked to Don the Snake Perdome. I talked to Brother Rusty. These are the most badass athletes in the world. They're boulders. They're rock. You're not going to get them. And they taught me all these techniques. So just take care of yourself, Brother Mike. If you want to race, let's race. Yep.
Yeah, we have about 2,500 people watching. Some people are just jumping in and wanting to know the story, which we're going on 16 minutes now. But so if you don't know, the headline pretty much says it all. NASCAR DQing Mike Wallace from his attempt. He was going to try to run the Daytona 500, and it's for inactivity. He's 65 years old. And the business side of this, I'm guessing, is all good because, as you discussed with Mike, and I don't remember if he said the amount of money on air. He told us, I know, but he had this car. It was basically a blank car, and he could sell all the sponsorships. And it seemed like he had a deal in place, and then he gets this curveball. So is that all good from what you've heard?
Well, you know, listen, I'm guilty of being straight up. Mike doesn't need money. Okay. Mike can live on land itself. Brother Mike is an incredible entrepreneur. He takes commercial real estate and fixes up and sells it. However, you know, there's an old story. The reason me and Rusty made it to Charlotte so quick is because we ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We were broke as a joke. Brother Mike has never been broke in his life. Mike is smarter than Rusty and me. Mike has always been better with his money. So Mike was going to bankroll this all on his own. I know it shocks people. I got this story burning in my head. Kyle Petty told me this. Kyle Petty said, and this is kind of like Mike. Kyle Petty said, Diddy, you know, down south they call their dads Diddies, which would have been Richard. Richard Petty said, Kyle, take all these old parts over to Buddy Arrington. Well, for all the old fans, Buddy Arrington was a guy that ran 20th every week. So Kyle says, I take all these parts over to Buddy Arrington's. And he says, I roll up and Buddy Arrington's living in this mansion because Buddy decided to run 20th. Kyle said, we were broke. Petty Enterprises didn't have any money. If you look at it right now, Richard's living in this little bitty old home because they spent all their money on racing. Mike's wealthy. And that's just the way it is because Mike was born like that. So Mike was going to bankroll all this on his own. However, he had the opportunity to sell the car because Carl Long said, give me this much. And if you get any more, you can keep it. Mike was raising money. And so Mike will simply just give that money back to the people. So, yeah.
Okay, let's see. We have a ton of comments, which we can't get to all of them, and there's a lot of complimentary ones of Mike, obviously, and people are saying, you know, this kind of stinks because they were rooting for him. Here's one, though, just because this person, Liberty or Death, says, I'm kind of on NASCAR's side with this one. He's older and hasn't raced anything in ages. I also hope NASCAR loses the lawsuit. Now, that's obviously different. The second part is the lawsuit about Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. But I guess what this person's trying to say is, and I'm sure they were rooting for Mike, but I do think you can understand NASCAR's side of this.
Yes.
Even if you don't agree with NASCAR, you can understand it, is what I'm saying.
Yes. And I liked that question because what he did is what I do. I'm going to hit you hard, but then I'm going to pull, you know, when I use a knife, I never puncture the skin. That man did not puncture the skin. He said, just worried about Mike. And you know, me too. Okay. So I'm cheering my brother on. You know what I mean? I'm cheering my brother on. Hey, listen, it's no different than when Kenny Schrader told me, and Kenny Schrader, if you're listening to this, we're brothers. When Kenny Schrader told me he was going to run a champ car at DeCoin last year, I was like, what? Champ cars are the most dangerous race cars. Now they're big, but I would say a sprint car, a non-wing sprint car, is more dangerous. But when Kenny Schrader told me he was going to run a champ car at DeCoin, I'm like, why? So this can go all the way. You know what I mean? Does Mike have a death wish? No. I mean, how many times did Dale Sr. say, drop the rag? It's like, oh gosh, aren't you afraid? Don't you want to defend against this? I've had people say to me, why don't you take your modified to a mile dirt track? And I'm like, because I build my own race cars. It's got a Pinto spindle on the right front. The drive shaft is small. Now, I'll run an ARCA car at DeCoin. So my answer is this. I was worried about Mike too. But I figured, the cars are safe. And this is what Mike wants to do. That's where I was coming from, So the guy that came out and was rude right away to Mike, I acknowledge it. I acknowledge it. It was just hard for me to hear. I don't like people roughing my family up. Like I said, you throw a block at me, you throw a brick at me, I'm coming back with a block. So I acknowledge all of it. I acknowledge it all. And here we are. And it is more of a story about life now, Charlie. It's no different than, Charlie, let me turn this around a little bit. What sports figure? Was it Albert Pujols? Was it Jimmy Edmonds? Who, these guys that are 38? I mean, who's the guy that pitched for the Mets that was 40 years old? We see these guys doing it. It's like, oh my God, you know what? I mean, you got to see that, right?
Absolutely. What I'm wondering too is, I think this is kind of interesting. It's not going to happen now, but we can talk about it. I mean, somebody who's 65 years old, but has ran NASCAR essentially their whole life and is somebody who's great at Daytona, great at a drafting track. And I'm bringing this up because kind of the story of last week is somebody like Helio Castroneves, who obviously is this superstar racer, but NASCAR is going to allow some of these world-class drivers with bigger names, whether you're F1, IndyCar, and these guys can drive. But here's somebody like Mike, who obviously doesn't have as big of a name as Helio Castroneves, but he knows NASCAR. I mean, that's kind of interesting too. If you're talking about it from a safety standpoint, I understand Mike's older, but I mean, he is a NASCAR driver, and NASCAR is going to be allowing some F1 guys and some open wheel guys that don't have nearly as much seat experience in a stock car, right?
Yeah, and I think Mike got lost in the holidays too. I think if Mike would have announced this, let's say December 1st, because I'm thinking Mike announced this. I got back from my cruise. I think if Mike announced this too late. And you Charlie, look, I understand the executives are involved, but let's face it, those executives, they leave December 23rd and they're getting back from their ski trips, and I think Mike got lost by the executives. Because here, when we look back at it, now we're just discussing it, okay?
Yeah.
We've said nothing bad. We're discussing this if this were to ever happen again. Now that I look at it, now that you're poking my brain right now, they should have said, hey, Mike, we want you to go to the ARCA test, and we want to see you, and we want to watch you get out of this car. Because see, that's what they did with all of us. Charlie, there's a rule in place right now. Mike's texting me right now. Let me see. Hold on. Okay. Oh, wow. He wrote me a love letter. He probably doesn't even know we're on right now, but yeah, January 22 will be 1 year since Carla passed. Mike just said it's been a shitty day. Sorry for the cuss word, but it's a long one. It's about this long. He doesn't even know we're on the air right now, but this is recorded, so he'll go back and watch it. Love you, brother. So here's what I think. Okay, here's what they did with me. Here's my story. Remember, everybody, my new deal over the last couple of years is I don't tell anybody what to do. I tell you my story. NASCAR said to me, Kenny, you know, what you need to do is send us, you know, send us your biography. So I said, okay, I run ASA. I run Michigan Speedway in my ASA car. I run Salem, Indiana. I run Winchester. And Les Richter was the guy that won it. He was the man. Les was the man. He was the Elton Sawyer. And my wife and my mom and myself, we put this beautiful biography together. Sent it to NASCAR, and they said, wow, we've never seen anything like this. You're approved to come down and test. So I went to Daytona, but I'd already run Michigan Super Speedway in my ASA car. And I go down there and I spent 2 weeks testing. Then they approved me. Okay. So I really think that if Mike would have started this process earlier, it wouldn't have got lost in the holidays. And he could even pled his case. He says, hey, how about I go down in an ARCA car? You know, so as we look back, you know, we're just discussing how to keep this from ever happening again. And, you know, you just simply can't show up and go to Daytona. And I know that's a big statement, Charlie. You simply can't just go to Daytona. But with 800 NASCAR starts, Mike's like, I'll just go to Daytona. He talks to some of the executives. They're like, that's awesome. So, yeah, then he doesn't talk to the competition side, and he gets this, you know, tough phone call today.
Yeah, well, people are into the story. We have a total of 11,000 people have already watched this on YouTube. We have 3,400 watching now live. Thank you, guys. Please give us the thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. This live stream brought to you by JEGS, of course. And because we still have so many people watching, Kenny, and it is a really interesting story. And now it's all hypothetical anyway. What do you think? How tough of a task do you think it would have been for Mike to make this race? I remember when he did the interview with you at the time, a couple of weeks ago, I believe he said there were about 8 cars that were going to be competing for the final 4 spots, right? And that was before NASCAR changes this rule. So now Helio Castroneves can be the 41st car. So whatever the math is, if Mike had to be one of 3 or 4 cars out of 7 or 8 to make the field, how much of an uphill battle do you think that would have been for him?
So I'm going to answer that question, but in a little different way. It was always going to be an uphill battle, but I think this was about the process for Mike.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you interview people, sometimes it's hard to get things out of them. So I'm going to look into my brother's brain. I think this was more about the process, because Mike always says, you know, if I don't qualify good, I'm going to race my way in. Mike had this positive mental attitude. If I don't straight up, if my speed is not fast enough, hell, I'm just going to qualify, because Mike did that a lot. Mike was always in the twin at the time. It was the twin 150s. Then they made it the twin 125s. So Mike always raced his way in. Mike, for furthermore, brother Mike and myself never drove cars good enough that had speed. We were always either, for me, I had one year where I was in on points, but, you know, we always drove lesser cars. And then, you know, my popularity with, you know, Talladega was because I was a good drafter, you know, and then the same thing with when I drove the, the 87 for Furniture Row, and I didn't qualify in on speed, but I ran 5th or 6th in the twin 150, and I raced my way in. And, you know, so us Wallaces, you know, we were always used to just taking mediocre cars and running those twin races and making it exciting. So in Mike's brain, Mike's going, hey, I'm going to Speed Weeks. If I don't qualify, I'm going to run the twin 150. If I don't make the Daytona 500, you know, those qualifying races are on big TV. So I think that's the way Mike was looking at it. It would have been dejecting for him not to make the 500, but I think he would have been okay with it.
For sure. All right, we're at about right at 30 minutes now.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked all angles. Anything I left out that you didn't get off your chest here before we wrap up?
Nope. I think you did good, Charlie. Like I said, you're the best at this. I grew up watching you on Channel 2. I appreciate you interviewing me about it. I don't think right now was the time for Mike to talk. I'm not talking for him. I told Mike I was going to do this on Coffee with Kenny, but I just felt like that was the wrong format. Because as you can tell, we tell what happened, and then it's like, okay, how do we keep this from happening again? Because like I said, I bet Schrader would have been approved because he's racing every single week. And it comes down to their decision, and they look at the paperwork and they're like, hold on, Mike hasn't raced any asphalt in 5 years. And I thought that too, but I thought, hey, he's going to get some sim work. He's going to go on the chassis dyno. He's going to go through the gearbox. He's working out, and I listen, I'll leave you with this, Charlie. If anybody was going to tell Mike no, it was going to be Rusty, not me. Because Rusty's the alpha male in this family. And I love my brother Rusty, but I don't jack with him because he's the boss. And it's just easier. And listen, me and Rusty have had some knockdown, drag out arguments. We have up as a year ago, but over silly stuff. And we love each other. We're extremely close. All of us brothers are. But if somebody's going to go, Mike, we all told him he was crazy in a funny way, right? What the hell are you doing? What? Well, okay. So, but you know what Rusty's response was? And you know what Kenny Schrader's response was? I wished I could do it. Kenny Schrader said, I'd love to do it. Rusty said, I'd love to do it, but my eyes are too bad. So, I think I just want to end like that. And, what a dream it was. What a dream it was. And I'll be reaching out to Mike, and, we'll give him some positive mental attitude, and maybe something good will come out of this.
Well said. You mentioned Schrader. Just so everybody knows, we got Herman Schrader coming out tomorrow here on YouTube and Dirty Mo Media podcast. And then we have the Kenny Conversation with Amy Earnhardt, which is really good. Recorded that one already. So that'll come out on the YouTube channel here on Wednesday, Herm. And then that'll be on Kenny Conversations, Dirty Mo Media podcast on Thursday. So we got a lot going on this week.
And Amy Earnhardt did not let us down. She is absolutely fantastic. I did a deep dive on Wikipedia and everywhere, and she said, Kenny Wallace. She said, laugh out loud. She texted me. Well, then we interviewed her. She says, you're the CIA. And yeah, listen to that one. You'll understand why Dale Jr. married her. She's a badass. And yeah, it's a good one.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Again, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. Herm, thanks so much, buddy. We'll see you soon. And again, thank you, everybody. And we will we'll end the old stream right here. End stream.